Hi everyone, 12:30 here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Jane Monreal, Nick Sturdivant in later tonight. We'll both be joining you here on WCNC Charlotte at 4. You know the story. We are covering weather. We want you to be weather alert, and our weather impact team, all 6 of them, so busy staying on top of this. The one and only Larry Sprinkle joining us here in the Live Impact studio this afternoon. We love this is more than a cameo too. We're making you work for your bread and butter today, Larry.
Bread and butter, bread
Earn
and
that
milk.
icon status.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I mean, how many people eat really, like milk sandwiches?
Milk sandwiches?
Yeah, the bread and milk thing.
That was.
I've never
you know
understood
what?
that.
I
I
never
did.
understood it either.
All
did.
these years.
Bread and a little butter, maybe a little jam. Bread, butter, and jam sandwich.
Well, the bread and milk thing, I guess so.
yeah, but
But yeah, on a more serious note, yes, this is the weekend. This is the time, and that old saying, "The calm before the storm." We're certainly in that situation right now. But as we head into the weekend, we see the opportunity for a massive storm system to just really take over the entire area. Here's the way it looks as far as impacts, our winter weather impacts for the weekend. Yes, the total amount of sleet, and sleet is something that sticks like snow, falls as a solid piece of nature. It falls frozen. It goes through the atmosphere, melts as snow, then freezes and falls on the surface. So we're talking about 1 to 3 inches of that. We'll go back to the graphic and show. I'm talking about 1 to 3 inches of snow and of sleet, which is measured as snow, believe it or not. Now here's what we're looking at. Travel will definitely be a major issue, and really the time frame of this, you're okay now, you're okay this evening, even overnight. If you had to travel tomorrow morning, is going to be okay up until midday, up until about noon to 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then as we head towards late afternoon, that's when travel impacts are going to be felt, especially as you go west and southwest of here, along the Interstate 40 corridor westbound, Interstate 85 southbound. Those are the corridors starting late afternoon. We start to see the impacts from this as we take a look and show you some of the graphics so important to see. Snow is what we're going to see to begin with. This is off the roads between 2 and 6. Snow begins, then we see a changeover to sleet and some accumulated sleet. That means icy roads for the entire area. Then as we get towards late tonight, tomorrow, as we get into Sunday, that's when it's a changeover to freezing rain. That's rain that freezes when it hits the surface. That's trees, power limbs, there's bridges, overpasses, and that is a sheet of ice. It falls as rain and freezes over immediately, and that's the major issue as we see hour after hour of that. So the time frame is going to be an all-day Sunday issue, and the team will be here starting early in the morning on Sunday, continuing all the way possibly into Monday morning. So the issue is what happens as far as power outages, and yeah, that's a major issue. When the ice accumulates on the tree branches, the power lines, you get enough ice up to about 1/4 of an inch, then we start to see those issues, and we're expecting anywhere from probably 1/2 inch to 1 inch of ice accretion. That means on the trees, the power lines, the bridges, the overpasses, and you start to see those tree limbs snap. They hit the power lines. Power lines can sag with weight. They snap, and then you get the power outages. And we go back in time. I'll never forget 2002. Is kind of the banner for all of this. That's the year that we saw the biggest ice storm of all time, and it just basically shuts down not only Charlotte, but it'll probably shut down the southeast, and that's a major concern that we have for this impending storm system.
Well, I mean, so really, Larry, this weekend as we look into the area. And we're seeing that band, the colors really get into that deep purple.
Yeah,
where it gets
that's
scary.
Basically, that's an ice storm. And that's really, we're in that ice storm warning area. And that covers the Piedmont. It goes across the Piedmont along the I-85 corridor. And that's where we're talking about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of ice. And that basically is what falls asleep and collects on the ground, but it's basically the freezing rain that we're going to see. This is rain, once again, that freezes on a surface. And that starts out on the bridges, the overpasses, the power lines, trees, tree limbs, and that causes the major issues.
So, Larry, you were there when, or you were here for a while, And so you've seen it all.
For a while, yes, a few.
You've seen some storms, right?
Absolutely.
In your memory, what do you take away from then that that is unlike any other?
Well, if you want to go back in history, I can go back into when I was on the radio. Go back to the 1970s. You go back to like 1978. There was a major storm system then, and at that time everything shut down for days. And we go back. I go back to 1998, big storm system then, and then we get into later on. We get into that 2002. That was a big one right there, and that was called the Storm of the Ages, Ice Storm of the Ages. It was called Fran on ice. We all remember Hurricane Fran, the devastation.
Yeah.
Well, this was an ice storm. That 2002 storm was the largest outages in Duke Energy's history. That was more than any hurricane, more than Hurricane Hugo, and we're talking about thousands of people without power. I made some notes back at that time, and went back and found them. 285,000 people in Charlotte alone were without power. 1.8 million in North and South Carolina. That's the 2002 storm. And some people were without power for up to 2 weeks of time.
Yeah, that is wild.
It was one of those, as I said, that was the ice storm of the ages. It was called that after we did a review of it. I wrote down a quote, and this is from one of the Duke Energy employees, said, "It was a mangled mess of trees and power lines."
Yeah.
That was one of the workers out there who was on the scene for it. So it was basically 12 hours of nonstop freezing rain.
Oh, my
12 hours of
goodness.
that. I mean, and if you want to talk about what's going to happen with this one, you've been watching, you've been listening, and the folks here at WCNC and in our weather department have been saying this. This could be as devastating as that. I mean, obviously it hasn't gotten here yet, but that's why it's so important to prepare and to know in advance how to deal with this and be prepared for days of power outages.
Do you think it's going to be 12 hours of freezing rain?
I'm not going to guess the
Something like
number of
that? Okay.
hours, but it certainly will be hours of freezing precipitation starting out as sleet. If you were to wish for the less of two evils, sleet would be the one.
Okay.
Right.
Sleet does collect on roads. It builds up. You can have inches of sleet. Unfortunately, we're going to see a changeover to freezing rain. Everything in weather is based on what happens here, but not only here, but when you go up in altitude, thousands of feet up. So everything starts out as snow, and we talk about this warm nose. It's like a sandwich where you have a top layer extremely cold. Then there's a layer of warmer air above freezing, and then another area below that of cold air. So with that warm nose, the snow falls and melts for a period of time and refreezes before it hits the ground. That's sleet. Or it has time to only melt a little bit and falls as a frozen object, and that's sleet. And then we get into the situation where that that sleet or the snow melts and falls as rain, but at the surface is cold enough where the temperature is freezing or below, and you get a solid sheet of ice, and that's freezing rain.
That's crazy to think that. I'm visualizing it rain, and then it
Yeah.
hits the ground and freezes.
And freezes.
Yeah, that's
On
exactly
contact.
what it is. That's what freezing rain is. Yeah, it's what's happened. That snow is melted and falls as a raindrop, or falls as sleet, and then goes to a little bit warmer atmosphere, turns into a solid into rain, a drop of rain, and then a sheet of ice at the surface. I know it's kind of confusing about the precipitation, but once again, freezing rain is rain, a raindrop that
Right.
freezes instantly on the surface.
Right. And we will see some
We'll see
of
that.
at some point.
That's definitely so, and I think that's a Sunday event, and then some of this could, turn over to on Monday, early Monday, as just rain. And then, you get rain that falls just as rain. But once again, when the temperature is way below freezing outside, that's more ice to what we already have.
I have a question for you, Larry.
Yeah.
in your years of being here and you've been through these major events, we were talking with Chris this morning about road impacts because
Right.
there are some people, nurses, doctors,
Yes.
emergency
It's
personnel, that
imperative,
have
yeah.
to drive.
Yeah. Yes.
Have you, in these events, have they ever shut down roads completely, like major interstates,
Well, that's,
thoroughfares?
yeah, I've seen where interstates have had to be shut down
Right.
because of so many accidents, and that's why people, unless it's imperative, unless you are, you work in law enforcement, you work as a firefighter, medic or whatever, those people have to be out.
Essential workers, yes.
If you don't, more people out there, the more we're going to see the problems develop. And that's
Right.
what's happened. People have been out on the interstates. You have these major accidents. It happened in Raleigh not that long ago, in the past couple of years. What I've seen and what we do, what I've done as someone who has to be here,
Yeah.
if you're driving and there's no one else out there, you can deal with sliding
Right.
and slipping but the more people, the more problems develop. So we're trying to limit the number of people who are out, and that's why I get everything done by tomorrow, say early afternoon. Then you're ready, you're prepared. If you wait until the last minute, if you're trying to do this Saturday night or Sunday, it's too late.
Right.
That's when the problems are occurring.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've definitely seen that. And that's why it's only if there are people, it's necessary.
Right.
If you're in the medical field, if you're a firefighter, a police officer,
You have to go to work.
you have to be out there.
Yeah,
And
no,
then-
we were asking Chris this morning
Yeah.
for our own personal
Personal time
necessity.
frames.
Exactly. I have to drive midnight
Yes.
ish, Saturday night.
Right. On a major interstate.
On a major interstate. Carlene has to come in
Right.
after
We were
Yeah.
just curious to see
Sunday
if they've
morning.
ever shut down
Okay,
roads
yeah, yeah.
entirely, like big interstates entirely,
I
just to
think
kind of avoid it.
interstates, but and here's what I think I even heard Brad talking about this, and I've done the same thing. Stay off the major roads, stay off the interstates, go the secondary. When I've come to work at this station over the past 40 years in these severe weather situations where it's been ice or snow or whatever, I always go the old-fashioned way into Charlotte, and I'll because I live in Matthews, I'll hit Monroe Road and take that all the way up to 7th Street into Charlotte, into Uptown, to Tryon,
Right.
and then I take Tryon South, and that's basically, that whole trip is basically a flat trip. There's not too many hills or anything like that. So stay on the secondary road. It's one time where secondary roads are important.
Right.
They're the less traveled, and in many cases, the less problems you have,
Right.
as long as they're not hilly or whatever. But I would say, all you gotta do, find the old highways that come into Charlotte and out into our part of the Charlotte area here in the southwestern corner of Billy Graham Parkway. Yeah, it's important. People in the media, and a lot of people ask, why are you guys out? Well, we are a federally licensed organization whose responsibility is to give information to the
Right.
public.
Right.
And so it's imperative that people in this industry have to be out in it as little as possible, but you have to make
We
it
still
from
have
point
to
A
be
to point
into
B.
it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And once you're here, you stay here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, I know, is going to be hunkered down here and before the calm before the storm, as we hit the crux of this storm. Larry, appreciate you as always.
Thank you,
Larry.
and thanks for what all you guys are doing, and I just hope that we get through this with a lot of prayers, and that we get through this without any major turmoil. But I think the information has been dispensed out there. One great thing about what we can do today with the technology, especially in the weather business, that we have our computer models and the ability to look ahead many days. Back to 2002, the time frame was only a couple of days beforehand. I mean, we knew that we're going to look at a winter storm system, but the circumstances, the negative parts of that developed a couple of days out. So the warning now is much sooner than back in those days when we had less technology.
Right. So
Yeah.
much more
Heed the
time.
warning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To heed
Yeah.
the warnings,
That's it.
and
Yeah.
we'll stay safe.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks in part to you, Larry. See you on the other side of this weekend
Yes.
as well.